Hello everyone, how are you? In this video we will talk about DHCP. The first thing, what the DHCP is. DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. What the DHCP does? DHCP is responsible for distribute a configuration or distribute the IP address for the client for the clients in the network, in the context of network. But not just the IP address. DHCP is responsible for distribute IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, and so on. DNS, so configuration from its name, DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, to distribute the IP address, and DNS to distribute the configuration for the host or the clients in the network. So this is the DHCP. Now you can see here, if you want to add IP address, go to the change adapter setting and go to the Ethernet and properties. IP4. Normally from here we add the IP address. This is very old way to add the IP address and add configuration. From here add IP address, add the subnet mask and default gateway for router, and also DNS and alternative DNS and so on. Now in the client we just make obtain an IP address automatically. That means you should have an DHCP server to obtain this IP, to distribute the IP to the client. So just make it here in the client, obtain an IP address automatically and obtain DNS server automatically, and just OK and OK here. So the DHCP is just a service that server provide. We say the server is a computer that provide services to the client or to the other computers. DHCP is one of these services that server provide. So when we obtain the IP address in the client, we'll make it just obtain IP. We say just obtain IP. The operation or this process will happen. Call it DORA. DORA for discover, offers, or DORA stands for discover and offer and request and acknowledge. In the network, when we set the IP, the obtain IP address for the client, like this here, we'll make it now. The client send a discover, not request, discover, because discover is not just one request. Send a many requests to all the computers in the network, to all the servers in the network. The client say, I need IP address, I need configuration, I need DNS. So just send the discover, and server send the offer. DHCP server receive this discover or request and send the offer. DHCP said, yes, I have this IP address, I have range of IP address, I have for example 100 of IP address and configuration. Now the computer or the client, yes, I need one of those IP address. Make a request, say I need this IP address, for example 192, 168, 4 and 20 for example. And then the server acknowledge, yes, server said yes, I agree, take this IP address or configuration. This is how it is work. Just in the computer, every client in the network just send the discover, and the DHCP send an offer. After that, every computer send a request for the IP address, and then the DHCP distribute this IP address for the client. If you have thousands of computers in the network, every computer will send the discover, and the DHCP will distribute the IP address for every computer in the network. So now here, if you go to the client, go to the server, the first thing you should install the service, DHCP, from here, and next, and just here you can see DHCP server. In my server, I already installed this. Just install, next, and install, and that is. After install and restart, or maybe not restart the computer without restart, just go to the tools and DHCP. Now I want to configure my server to serve as DHCP server. Now you can see here DHCP. Now just see IP4, expand, and then right click and use scope. Now I want to add the range of IP address in my server. For example, 50 IP address, because I want to configure or I want to distribute the IP address in the network, so I should add the range of IP address. So now just next, and here say anything, any name, just name for the scope. For example, IP4. Description, you can write any description or just ignore it. Then now I want to add here configure setting for DHCP server. Now I want to add the range. For example, 192, 168. For example, here 4, and then for example from 10. Now just pay attention, the network class or the network section in the first three section in the IP address for the network should be same as the server, because I want to distribute the IP address for the clients for the computer in the network. So the network class should be the same for the server and the client. Now here in our server, from here you can see the network class or the network section, the first three like this, 192, 168 and 4. So should be like this also in the DHCP. And then here from 10 until 68, 4 also. And now for example from 10 until 100. That means 90 IP address. Here you can subnet mask like this. Also the length you can just as default, make it at let it as default. Next. Now here add exclusions IP address. Exclusions, that mean I say the DHCP will distribute the IP address for the client. Now I'll distribute the IP address from 10 until 100. But now I want to reserve some IP address for exclusions. Those IP address, I don't want the server to distribute those IP address to the client. I want to use those IP address for the printers, for the scanner, for any device. I want to reserve this IP address, and I want to assign those IP address manually by myself. I don't want the server to distribute the IP address. For example, from 10, because our IP address is from 10 until and 30. I have just a 20 IP address. From 10 until 30, I want to reserve to myself, to add it manually. I don't want the server to distribute those IP addresses from 10 until 30. Add, and then next again. Now here, the least duration. Now when the server add the IP address or distribute the IP address to the client's computer, not for the infinite. Of course, there is a time. The computer assign the IP address or obtain the IP address just for 8 days, by default. I can make it, for example, 10 days. That means if the server distribute the IP address for the client just for the 10 days. After 10 days end, the client will request again for IP address automatically. You don't need to change the IP address, or we don't need to do anything. Just automatically the client request for the IP address again, for the same IP address. Why this? Because maybe sometimes the computer will remove the client from the network, so the IP address will still reserve. No, I want to release the IP address and redistribute to other computer. So just 10 days and the computer request again. Then here I want to add for the router for example 1. For router, that means if my network connect with the internet, I want to connect my network to the internet, so I should have a router. I should add IP address also for the router, also automatically. Next, now here the DNS. See the domain lab.com and the DNS. Of course, my IP address for the server. Also, I want to distribute the DNS for the client. The DNS should be the same as the IP address for the server, because my server is serve as DNS server and DHCP server and so on. So the same as IP address for my server. Next again, here I don't need this because it's very old service. Next and finish. Now I have a scope here. You can see I have the scope here. Just double click. I can see here address pool. The server will distribute IP address from 10 until 100, and there is also excluded IP address from 10 until 30. Also, this IP address for excluded, that means I don't need the DHCP server to distribute those IP address from 10 until 30. Here also address leases. Server will distribute an IP address to the computers. Every computer I distribute the IP address, I can see the computer here and the IP address for the computer. And then scope options. Here I can change the router, the IP address for the router, or add another IP address. And DNS server, can change it, the IP address for the DNS, and domain name, and so on. Now we complete from the server side. Now just go to the client side. I here just go to the Ali, for example, just 123. After that, just go to the obtain IP address, right click, open network, go to the change adapter setting, right click, properties, administrator, and CSD capital Jihan 2020. Sorry. Now go to the IP address, and instead of I add the IP address, assign the IP address manually, just go here, obtain IP address, and obtain DNS. Now this client will receive the IP address from the server, from one of those IP addresses here in the pool, from 10 until 100. But from 10 until 30 just excluded, so just from the 31 after until 100. So just OK. Now if you go to the CMD command line, click here, and IP config, I want to see the IP address. Now you can see I have the IP address 4 and 32. Why 32? Because from 10 to the 30 excluded, so from the 31 and 32. Here 32 because I have another computer in the previous. But now just obtain the IP address from the server automatically. If you add another computer, another client, you will see 33 and so on. If it does not work from the first time, just go to make IP config. Sometimes it's not obtain IP address automatically. You should add IP config and release. After that, now you can see IP config and renew. I want to renew IP address from the server. Now just after renew, we'll see the new IP address come from the server. Now you can see add IP address again. And if you go to the list here and just refresh, you can see I have IP address 32 and 31 bad just for previous computer. So now I have this IP address and the computer here. But just pay attention if you want to add using the DHCP properly. The first thing, you should go to the edit in the virtual machine and virtual network editor. So here you can see DHCP. Should make it change setting. Yes. Here DHCP should just uncheck. If it is like this, enable, you should just check it again. Disable the DHCP and apply. I mean for the host only and for everything. Just try to disable the DHCP, because if you not disable the DHCP, the VMware will distribute the DHCP to the client, so it will not work.